First of all, I want to, throw out an apology to, Trouble TRO or anybody else. I know that, when you do these web comics and everything on Patreon, that, you want the people that are supporting you to, financially to be the ones that see them and, not, have people see them for free and all that. So I do understand that and I do apologize. But I will say this. In defense. Even though I am sorry about that, and I will try not to do that in the future, especially like with this one. But I will say this. I will say this in defense. The fact that I did this, and I am apologetic about it, you have to agree that there are some that do go out at certain websites and they will upload these comics. They will download them in PDF form, or they will download them, individually in picture form, and they will, upload them to these other sites because, quite frankly, there's a lot of people that have this belief that they shouldn't have to pay for something that, if they had the technology themselves or they had the knowledge themselves, they'd be able to do themselves, if you know what I mean. So, again, I do apologize, and I will try my best in the future not to do those kind of things. But anyway, getting to what this audio video podcast is about. I will say this. What Trouble TRO has done with, some of his stories, collabs with Mr. Internet Man or so on, I think is tremendous. Now, he has taken a break right now from Pink Benefits. We have seen him take a break from that. And we know that Joven16 is bringing back NanoShift from what they've mentioned to somebody in the comment section at one point next week. So we know that's potentially on the horizon as well. Wherever they lead off from the end of the last one, because it's been a long time, is anybody's guess. I mean, my theory, back when they ended it, is you have to wonder that if the next 10 pages or so we see, it's just the two female friends of Jay talking with these unknown people, and we see Jay as a liquid form just floating in a tube or something like that, being, incoherent or basically being in an inanimate state. Like she could hear, but she can't really do nothing about it because all she's doing is floating or something like that. Or maybe they time skip, months later and, Jay's still learning about her powers or something like that. I don't know. We'll find out next week, or this week, I'm assuming. But yeah, according to Trouble TRO, he's taking some time off, from doing Pink Benefits. And that's always what's interesting about these kind of stories. Like, we're finally going to get, a conclusion, or a continuation, I should say, with, Joven16, and everything. We're finally going to get a conclusion, with them. We're finally going to get a conclusion with NanoShift and everything. But that, and I think I've mentioned this before, but that's always what's interesting when you do these kind of stories, whether you write about them or you write and then you do SFM scripts, 3D models, scripts or whatever. That's, hold on for a second. Sorry, I thought I heard something there. But anyway, like I said, if there's one thing about these kind of stories sometimes, especially if you make a series out of them, is you're always trying to, figure out what to do next and everything. You're always trying to think about, okay, what's the next, direction I could take, the story, and I could take the characters in and all that. And sometimes that's hard to do, to the point that, you need to legitimately, and this is the honest truth, you need to legitimately take a break. You need to basically, hold off for a while until you can come up with another idea. Now, sometimes you hold off because, let's say you have other stories you want to focus on and try to get them done as well. Like, you've held off on some other stories and now you want to continue them. And believe me, Believe me, Joven 16, Trouble TRO, Nextstat, and others have done exactly that. In fact, Minor Dash Alterations over at DeviantArt, I don't know what happened to them, have had several stories, in cliffhanger limbo, for quite some time because we don't know what their status is right now, if any. And here's the thing too, sometimes when people do these kind of stories, they might have a change happen in their life to where they just stop automatically and they're like, you know what, I'm not going to continue this anymore because this is not how my life is anymore and I shouldn't be doing this, da da da. Maybe that's what happened. We don't know. But the fact is, there have been stories that have been in cliffhanger limbo for quite some time. And whether or not they get completed at the hands of the original content creators or by newer content creators to take on the responsibility, then I guess that's the only way we find out whether or not, we'll get a continuation, of the story and maybe taking it in a different direction. I mean, I'll give you an example. I think I've mentioned this before. Basically, long story short, Minor Dice Alterations, one of those story series they were doing was called The Model and the Symbiont. And the way they ended the original part, not original part, let me rewind there. Okay. What I was trying to say is the way they ended the fourth part of it, I think it was the fourth part of it or something, I think it was the fourth part, was on a very somber note. And a lot of us didn't honestly like that ending. I mean, we understand from a storyline development and all that, you want a storyline character development, you want to get people invested and interested in what you're going to do, right? But here's the thing. There's a lot of us that, like I said, didn't like that ending in particular. So, there's a lot of us, myself included, that have decided to take it upon ourselves to basically, we've taken it upon ourselves to basically try to continue it. But continue it in a way that we feel is more appropriate. More along the lines of what we would expect, if you know what we mean. And one of those ways, in my opinion, is to have the friend that kind of told off the main character that, is now infused with the symbiont and being able to do all these kind of things. Instead of having the friend tell them off and say, hey, get control of it before it gets control of you or whatever, that instead we have the friend embracing it and wanting to embrace it even more so in a very intimate way. So for me, and others, we like to try to continue it in that manner because we feel that's the more appropriate way to go with it. So yeah, you got stories like that by Minor Dash Alterations. You got their take on the Demonica series kind of in cliffhanger limbo as well. Because again, we don't know what's going on with them personally. We don't know if they're going to school, it's family issues. We don't know what's happening, whatsoever, or if they're even around anymore. We don't know. But still, even if they do have other things they have to take care of, we know that deep down they want to try to get back to these stories. But maybe one of the things that's holding them back from going back to these stories is how do they resolve the cliffhanger? Like, how do they continue it? How do they, progress forward with the characters in the stories? What's the next step? And that's kind of what we've seen, like I said, with Trouble TRO, or we're seeing with Trouble TRO, with concluding Pink Benefits for a little bit, as well as what we're seeing, or what we did see, with Joven 16 and the Nano Shift series, and probably other series that they've done, previously in the past, as well as what we've seen with Nextstat and others. Because sometimes it takes time to figure out, okay, what is the next step? Where do we go from here? I mean, it could be, the easiest solution would be, well, well, I could just go the liquidy melty route with these girls all the time. Make it easier. Just have them get intimate, get it on, liquidy melty, and then they fuse together or evaporate or whatever. You could, that right there, going in that direction with any one of those options is the easiest thing to do. But when you want to tell a story, it's a different story itself, if you will. You want to tell a story that's complex, has a bit of eroticism, that drama, comedy, overall enjoyment to it that yourself, not only yourself, I should say, but others would want to enjoy. Then you want to try to take your time. You want to try to figure out, okay, what's the next step? What's the next step and everything. And, obviously that's why we see a lot of these stories in cliffhanger limbo. But it does show that sometimes if you just go with the more simpler route that you're known for, especially if you're writing the story, that is probably the easiest and best solution to go with. And that's why I think Science Experiment for right now by Trouble TRO and Mr. Internet Man is going at the pace it's going. This is why also I think Unconventional 2 went at the pace it did. Because Mr. Internet Man, being the writer, knows, hey, the easiest way to get through the story quick so that my collabors, who are the artists and writers themselves, can move on to the other projects and I can move on to projects myself. The easiest and best way to go is the liquidy melty route, which could potentially end up in a fusion down the line. And that's what we saw with Unconventional 2. We saw that, and we got a decent ending out of that, and maybe even hints of something to come later. That is why when you look at Agent Pink 2, Bedlam's Revenge, or Agent Pink, Bedlam's Revenge 2, the epilogue between Demonica, Veronica, and, Betty, and then eventually Emily, we saw the route that they were going there. And it's like, basically, once you go that route, it's easy to pretty much progress the story. But again, sometimes people don't want to go that route because they want to tell a story and they don't want to always make it be like, oh, let's do this, let's do that, and be done with it. They want people to be invested. Yes, the shape-shifting, the melty gooiness, liquidness, the eroticism, and all, that goes along with it. And sometimes the eroticism being, the cause of the melty gooiness and all that, that's going to be part of the story, but they want to make a story that's more intriguing to the audience, a story that's going to get people invested and interested to come back for more and want to see more. But again, sometimes going the route, especially if you're the one writing the story, and you want to get the story out there quick to the public and everything, that probably going the best, going probably the more I'm not saying sensible way, but the more knowing way, the more tropey way that you're known for is probably the best solution. It's probably the best solution and the quickest solution. But to me, overall, this is why I think, most times when we have, someone like a Mr. Internet Man collabing as the writer, and one of their tropes is to go that route of melty gooiness and whatever, with the characters, is because they know it's the quickest, easiest way to get the story done and out to the public. But I also think that when others go that route, they realize that too, but they decide, hey, we can but they also decide, hey, we can go that route and we can get the story done quicker. But if we really want to tell a story, yes, we can incorporate it. All we want. But if we're going to tell a story, we need to also focus on the development of the characters, the progression of the characters, and the story itself. We can add all those things that others like Mr. Internet Man is known for doing, but we can add them in, during times where they're needed for the story, if not add them into, to where they help progress the story as well. if that makes any sense. But yeah, that's why, when you look at something like Science Experiment, and then before that, with Next Stat, you see things like Unconventional 2, what they did in the collaboration with Mr. Internet Man, you notice how quickly the stories come out. The stories come out basically because Mr. Internet Man already has it in his head exactly where he wants to go with it. And then, like I said, obviously, as I've said before, obviously when those like Triple TRO and Next Stat know, hey, we're working with Mr. Internet Man, he's probably going to go this route with this trope, they get themselves set up, like they get themselves ready. They create a folder in the laptop of the computer and say, that's for those gooey scenes that we're going to put into the story or into the comic if they're needed. Or they even start to create the gooey scenes to go along with the premise and everything. If they're going like that, like if they're going back and forth with him on the ideas that he's going to have in the story, maybe they're already creating the scenes and all that, to have set and ready to go, just in case they're needed. And it's all about knowing who you're working with, and how they like to, bring their creative talents to the table. So, not just the creative talents to the table, but that's basically, what happens when you know who you're working with and how they like to go in certain directions with a story. But yeah, overall, I know this may have not sounded like much, more rambling than anything, but I just wanted to come out here and talk about why certain stories that Trouble TRO, Joven 16, Next Stat, over on Patreon and so on, and even those like Minor Dash Alterations and others at DeviantArt, why certain stories sometimes end up in, Limbo, cliffhanger, Limbo, and everything, and why sometimes when they collab with someone like Mr. Internet Man, why we don't really see that being the case as much, and we just see a quick progression, like a quick, release of each chapter or part of the overall story, and before we know it, it's done. So, yeah, I just wanted to talk about that, give you my thoughts on it. Let me know what your thoughts are, and until next time, guys, I will talk to y'all later. Take care. God bless.